Welcome to the treasure trove of folk tales, a magical collection of stories that have inspired generations. Embark on a mythical journey with heroes, fairies, and enchanting creatures, opening the door to a world of imagination and emotion.
The Tale of the Merchant and the Jinn. That night, as the oil lamps within the palace flickered faintly like the dying breath of a fading star, Scheherazade leaned forward gently, her voice as soft as silk. May it please your majesty, this story begins not with swords or bloodshed, but with a tiny date pit light as a grain of sand, seemingly too insignificant to merit a second glance. Once upon a time, on the eastern fringes of ancient Persia, there lay a prosperous trading city named Siraf. This city awoke to the jingling of camel bells, drifted to sleep amidst the scent of frankincense, and dreamt dreams of gold and silver. Amidst the thousands of merchants who ebbed and flowed like the tides of the sea, there was one man named Hassan ibn Omar. He was renowned neither for his cunning nor for being the wealthiest man in the marketplace. Rather, he was respected by all for his unwavering integrity. At his stall, the scales never cheated, and his words were never false. Hassan was a man past 40, his black beard now flecked with silver, his gaze possessing the quiet serenity of one who had spent more time gazing upon the desert than into a mirror. He had a gentle wife, 2 dutiful children, and a home that, though modest in size, was always filled with warmth. Yet, like every true merchant, Hassan harbored a silent thirst deep within his heart, a thirst for distant roads, for lands where his footprints had never yet trod. One morning in early spring, as the sea breeze carried with it the scent of salt and the call of faraway lands, Hassan returned home earlier than usual. He turned to his wife and said, "This year I wish to travel further still." His wife did not ask how far, for she knew that to a merchant, far was a word without boundaries. She asked only this, "How long?" Hassan remained silent for a long moment before replying, "Perhaps a year." That night, he sat alone in the courtyard, gazing up at the stars. For a fleeting moment, he could not tell whether he was calculating profits or gambling with destiny. Ultimately, he sold a portion of his wares, purchased frankincense, turquoise, and fine silks, and joined a camel caravan bound for India, a land where it was said that even the gods preferred fragrant tea to blood. In the early days, the path was smooth and the sky stretched wide and open. But the deeper they ventured, the more the desert revealed its true nature, boundless, cold, and merciless. By day, the sand burned like fire, licking at the camel's hooves. By night, the biting wind blew like the whispers of the dead. Some in the caravan murmured that the desert possessed a memory, that it remembered every soul who passed through, and sometimes demanded a price for those memories. Hassan listened, but merely smiled. He believed in God, in the law of cause and effect, and in the conviction that one who sows no evil shall reap no misfortune. He did not know that destiny often arrives without warning, and sometimes it comes in the most diminutive of forms. After months of trading, having earned a modest profit, Hassan and his caravan began their return journey. The road home always feels longer, for within the traveler's heart, the weight of memories has grown heavier. One midday, with the sun hanging suspended overhead like an unblinking eye, the caravan decided to halt and rest. Hassan wandered off on his own, finding an ancient tree standing solitary amidst the sands, its trunk twisted and gnarled, as if it had witnessed the passage of far too much time. He sat down, removed his headscarf to wipe away the sweat, then reached into his pouch to retrieve a few dry biscuits and some dates. The wind fell silent. The desert held its breath. Hassan ate slowly. When he had finished, acting out of habit, he tossed the date pits onto the ground, not even bothering to look where they landed. To him, they were merely insignificant scraps, destined to be swiftly buried beneath the sand. In that very instant, the wheel of destiny began to turn silently, inexorably. Suddenly, the ground shook as if roused from slumber. The wind howled, whipping the sand into towering, swirling columns. The camels neighed in panic, collapsing to their knees. From the heart of the sandstorm, a colossal figure emerged. It was a deity, his form taller than a date palm, his skin as dark as a moonless night, and his eyes burning crimson like twin furnaces. In his hand, he held a long sword with a blade of cold, gleaming steel, dripping droplets of light like a mist of blood. His voice rang out. He did not need to shout, yet the entire desert heard him. "Mortal, rise!" Hassan sank to his knees, his heart pounding like a war drum. He had never known such terror, yet amidst that fear, there lay a strange, uncanny clarity. The deity roared, "You have slain my son." Hassan stood stunned. "My lord, I am but an honest merchant. I have never drawn a sword. I have never sought enmity. I beg of you, O Mighty One, Judge me with justice." The deity pointed down at the ground, where a date pit lay half buried in the sand. "The seed you cast down struck my son as he passed by. His blood soaked into this very sand." Hassan went pale. A date pit? A mindless, unconscious act? He wanted to cry out that it was absurd, but the deity's eyes knew nothing of human logic. The sword was raised. The air grew rigid and still. In that moment, facing death itself, Hassan did not beg for mercy. He simply spoke, "Grant me 1 year." The deity paused. 1 year? For what purpose? To return home, to settle my family's affairs, to pay my debts, and to prepare my soul. Thereafter, I shall return to this very spot on this day, at this hour. The wind began to subside. The deity gazed at Hassan for a long time, as if weighing the sincerity of a frail mortal. Finally, he spoke. "Very well. 1 year. If you do not return, I will seek out every single one of your kin." He plunged his sword into the sand. The earth cracked open, then closed once more. When the storm subsided, the deity had vanished. Hassan sat motionless for a very long time. It was not until the camel caravan called out to him that he rose like a man resurrected from the dead. Throughout the journey home, he no longer looked upon the desert as he had before. Every grain of sand now carried a question. How many things in my life have I unwittingly sown, without ever realizing it? When the gates of Sirif appeared, Hassan felt no joy. He knew that he had returned only to depart once more. As Hassan stepped through the wooden door of his home, everything remained exactly as it had been the day he left. The water jar beside the well, the old rug where the children used to lie and play, and the scent of baking bread still lingering in the air. Only he was different. His wife was overjoyed to see him, but then she suddenly paused. She recognized that look in his eyes, the look of a man who had left a part of his soul far away. That night, after the children had fallen asleep, Hassan recounted everything. The solitary tree, the accidental date seed, and the divine sword hovering above his head. His wife did not weep immediately. She listened in silence, her hands trembling slightly. It was not until Hassan had finished speaking that she buried her face in her hands, shedding silent tears. "So, just 1 year remains?" 1 year. Rumors spread quickly among the merchants. Some believed, others scoffed. Yet, when they looked into Hassan's serene eyes, no one dared dismiss his story as a fabrication. Hassan gradually sold off his wares, settled all his old debts, and redeemed the items he had once pawned. He gave aid to the poor without ostentation, as if he were repaying a debt to life itself. There were nights when he stayed awake until the early hours, simply to watch his children sleep. He strove to imprint every feature upon his memory, like one who fears forgetting a beloved face in the next life. One morning, a wealthy merchant asked, "If that story is true, why don't you simply run away? The gods cannot find you everywhere." Hassan merely shook his head. "I gave my word." That phrase spread throughout the city of Sirif. People began to call him the man who made a pact with the gods. Some advised his wife to remarry quickly. She refused. She said, "As long as he lives, I will wait." The days slipped away as swiftly as water through one's fingers. Then, the fateful day finally arrived. On that final night, Hassan did not sleep. He washed himself clean and donned a white robe, like a man preparing for his final prayer. He embraced his wife and children, offering them his parting words. When he left his home, it was still dark. The city still slept, only fate had awakened. Hassan walked alone. He wished to face the gods without witnesses. As the ancient tree came into view, time seemed to stand still. Hassan sat down in the very same spot. He set his satchel aside and waited. Before long, an old man leaning on a staff appeared on the horizon. "I have heard that you have come here to die." Hassan nodded. "If that is justice." The old man sat down beside him. "Then I shall sit with you. I wish to see how the gods pass judgment upon men." Before another word could be spoken, a second old man appeared in the distance, leading a female gazelle. The animal's eyes held a look of profound sadness, as if recalling a human lifetime. Then came a third old man, leading a female mule that walked with a heavy, labored tread. 3 men, 3 living souls, 3 untold stories. They gathered around the base of the tree, as if they had been summoned there long ago. The wind began to rise. The earth began to tremble. Hassan rose to his feet. The god appeared, just as he had the year before, yet this time, his gaze was deeper, heavier, like that of one who, too, bears the burden of pain. "You have returned. I gave my word." The deity raised his sword. But at that very moment, an old man leaning on a staff stepped forward. "O mighty one, hear my tale before you strike." The deity hesitated. Finally, he nodded. If the story satisfies me, I shall stay my blade. Hassan closed his eyes. Little did he know that these very stories would alter the deity's judgment. And your majesty. As the first old man began to speak, even the desert winds ceased to blow, for this tale was not merely a story of mankind. The desert winds fell still. The moon hung low, as if straining to listen. The storyteller spoke softly, her voice deepening. Your majesty, there are stories so heavy that even a deity must lay down his sword before hearing them through. The old man leaning on his staff stepped forward. His hair was snow white, yet his eyes were deep as if they had once mirrored themselves in the waters of the night. He pointed to the female gazelle standing beside him. O mighty one, this creature was once my wife. Hassan was stunned. The deity tilted his head, signaling for him to continue. The story of the first old man. In his youth, the old man had been a wealthy merchant who took a wife, a woman of great beauty, yet possessed of bottomless greed. Whenever he traveled afar, she would carry on a secret affair with a young slave, plotting to seize his entire fortune. By the grace of the heavens, he uncovered their treachery just in time. Yet, rather than killing her, he employed ancient magic to transform her into a gazelle, allowing her to live, but forever stripping her of the voice that had spoken such lies. On every moonlit night, the gazelle weeps. Her tears fall upon the sand like a belated act of repentance. I did not transform her out of hatred, the old man said, but so that every tear might remind me that the cruelest human being is not the betrayer, but the one who no longer knows how to forgive. The deity pondered for a long time. 1/3 of the merchant's life shall be spared. The sword was lowered. A second old man stepped forward, leading a female mule ahead. The animal hung its head, its ears drooping as if burdened by guilt. This creature is my sister-in-law. The story of the second old man. He recounted that when his older brother passed away, his sister-in-law, consumed by greed for the inheritance, grew envious of him. She employed dark magic to transform him into a dog. After years of wandering, enduring beatings, hunger, and thirst, he finally mastered the magic required to break the curse. Upon regaining his human form, he did not kill his sister-in-law. Instead, he turned her into a mule, condemning her to a life of ceaseless toil, so that she might taste the very suffering he had once endured. I thought that was justice, he said. But with every heavy step she took, I was reminded that vengeance never truly lightens the heart. The deity closed his eyes. 1/3 more is spared. The sword descended further. Only one final stroke remained. The third old man stepped forward. He did not speak immediately, but instead gazed at Hassan for a long moment. My story, he said, concerns the nature of loyalty, a virtue that even the gods themselves find difficult to judge. The story of the third old man. He once had a sworn brother. In times of adversity, he sacrificed everything to save his friend. Yet, when fortune smiled upon them, that very friend betrayed him, denouncing him before the king to seize power and gain. He was exiled and stripped of everything he owned. Yet, when that friend later fell into peril, it was he the victim who saved him once again. I did not do it because he deserved it, the old man said, but because I refused to become the very monster he had turned into. The deity looked up at the sky. This story is a judgment more difficult than any other. The deity plunged his sword into the sand. The wind blew softly like a whispered breath. 3 stories, 3 sins, 3 choices. He turned to Hassan. You killed by accident, bearing no malice. These men harmed intentionally, yet still retained a spark of humanity. Hassan knelt down, uttering not a word. I must think. Time passed slowly, like grains of sand falling one by one. The 3 old men stood motionless. Hassan felt his heart beating in rhythm with the wind. The deity raised his head. If I spare you, how will you live? Hassan replied, I will live in such a way that never again shall a single date be cast aside thoughtlessly. And your majesty. In that very moment, the fate of mankind no longer lay in the hands of the gods, but in their own solemn vows. The desert wind ceased blowing entirely. The sands lay still as the unrippled surface of a lake. The moon hung motionless at the zenith of the sky, round and bright like the eye of time, wide open to bear witness to the final moment of a sentence that had endured for a full year. The storyteller bowed her head, lowering her voice until it was barely loud enough for fate itself to hear. Your Majesty, there are verdicts written not in blood, but in awakening. The deity drew his sword from the sand. The blade no longer radiated the fierce light it had before. Instead, it glowed faintly as if it too were hesitating. He looked at Hassan, a small, frail man, yet one who stood tall and unwavering. Do you know why I have come? The deity asked. Hassan replied, his voice calm. Because of your pain. The deity paused. That was not the answer he had expected. My son died not out of malice, the deity spoke slowly, but because of human thoughtlessness. And that thoughtlessness is sharper than any sword. Hassan bowed his head. He offered no defense. The deity turned toward the three old men. You have exacted vengeance, you have punished, and you have forgiven, yet each choice has left behind a scar. Then he turned back to Hassan. You harbored no malice, yet death still occurred. The justice of the gods is not the same as the justice of men. The air grew heavy, as if on the verge of shattering. Finally, the god spoke. I spare your life. Hassan collapsed to his knees, but the god raised a hand. Not because you are innocent, but because you have accepted responsibility. The wind rose one last time, though this time it was not fierce. The three old men stepped back, their forms fading like mirages in the morning sun. The gazelle cast one final glance at Hassan. Its tears fell upon the sand and turned into moonlight. The mule bowed its head, then dissolved into the wind. The god drove his sword into the earth. Remember this. Every small action has an echo in the invisible realm. Having spoken, he vanished. Hassan stood alone beneath the tree. The desert returned to its eternal silence, as if neither God nor judgment had ever existed there. He returned to Siraf. From that day forth, Hassan was no longer a merchant of profit, but a merchant of prudence. He weighed every silver coin, but he weighed every word just as carefully. He taught his children, never cast anything away unless you know exactly where it will land. He lived a long, quiet life, and never recounted this tale to outsiders save on nights when the moon shone brightest. Scheherazade paused, gazing toward the throne. Her voice was as soft as incense smoke. May it please your majesty, that is the tale of a mortal who stood before a god, and was spared, yet she smiled gently as she continued. But that very god, upon leaving the desert, was compelled to follow another destiny, a destiny even more tangled and turbulent than the last. Scheherazade tilted her head and whispered, For in the distant east, there lived a young man named Codadad, one not born within the palace walls, yet swept into the maelstrom of 49 princes, each harboring an ambition, a curse, and a sword awaiting the day it would be drawn from its sheath. If your majesty wishes to know why these princes could not coexist beneath the same sky, or why Codadad became the key to their destiny, then grant me leave to continue the tale on the morrow.
The tale has come to an end, yet the magic of these legends lives on in your heart. Keep dreaming and spreading the wonder.